I'd like to introduce to you our 21st century Frederick Douglass, Mr. Donald Allen. Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? Or should I say good afternoon? I'm going to start off by reading one of my speeches that I wrote and presented in Boston, Massachusetts in 1865. The name of the speech is no other than What the Black Man Wants. I'm on with it. Mr. President, I came here as I come always to the meetings in New England. I ask friends who are apologizing for not insisting upon this right. Where can the black man look in this country for the assertion of his rights? If he may not look to the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society, where, I ask, under the whole heavens can he look for sympathy in asserting the right if he may not look at this plantation? Have you lifted us up to a certain height to see we are men and women, and then are any disposed to leave us there without seeing that we are put in possession of our rights? We look naturally to this platform for the assertion of all of our rights, and for this one especially. I understand the anti-slavery societies of this country to be based on two principles. First, the freedom of blacks in this country, and second, the elevation of them. Let me not be misunderstood here. I'm not asking for sympathy at the hands of the evolutionists, sympathy at the hands of any. I think the American people are disposed to be generous rather than just. I look over the country at the present time, and I see educational societies, sanctuary commissions, freemen associations are the like. All very good. But in regard to the colored people, there is always more is malevolent, I perceive, than just manifested towards us. What I ask for the Negro is not malevolence, not pity, not sympathy, but simple justice. The American people have always been anxious to know what they should do with us black folks. General Banks was distressed when solitude as to what he should do with the Negro. Everybody asks the same question, and they learn to ask it early of the evolutionists. What shall we do with the Negro? I have had but one answer from the beginning. Do nothing with us. In simple words, leave us be. If the apples will not remain on the tree by their own strength, if they are worm-eaten at the core, if they are early ripe and disposed to fall, let them fall. I am not for tying or fastening them back up on the tree in any way, except by nature's plan. If they will not stay there, then let them fall. the Negro cannot stand on his own 2 feet, then also let them fall. Give them a chance. Give us a chance to stand on our own 2 legs. Leave us alone. If you see us on our way to school, leave them alone. Don't disturb them. If you see them going to the dining hall, leave them alone. Let them go. If you see them going to the Waffle House, let them go. If you see them driving a luxury car, leave them alone. If you see them living in a nice neighborhood, leave them alone. Do not disturb them. If you see them going into a workshop, please just leave us alone. Your interference is doing us a positive injury. General Banks' preparation is of a piece with this attempt to prop up the Negro, to prop up us black folks. Leave him, her, leave them to fall if they cannot stand on their own. If the Negro cannot live by the line of internal justice, so beautifully pictured to you in that illustration used by Mr. Phillips, the fault is not yours. It will be the one who made the Negro and established that line for his government. Let him live or die by that. If you will only untie his hands and give him a chance, I think he will live. He will work as readily for himself as the white man. A great many delusions have been swept away by this war. One was that the Negro would not work. He has proved his ability time and again to work. Another was that the Negro would not fight, that he possessed only the sheepish attributes of humanity. It was a perfect lamb or an Uncle Tom, disposed to take off his coat whenever required and stand there, fold his hands, and be whipped by anybody who desired to whip him. But the war has proved that there is a great deal of human nature in the Negro. Ladies and gentlemen, and the Negro, he and she will fight. As Mr. Quincy Adams, the president, said in earlier days than this, when there is a reasonable possibility of whipping anybody, you better believe it won't be the Negro. Because we will fight for our rights. They say I was born on a Tucker Hole in Eastern Maryland. They say my birthday is February the 14th, 1818. The way I know this because I would hear the grown folks talking. And when they would talk, they would say that I was born on that day. My mother, Miss Harriet Bailey, she was the 4th oldest of 12 kids. From my mother, Betty Bailey, and her husband, Ned Bailey. My mother, 3 times a week. Now just imagine, as I'm looking out, I see everybody with some shoes on. You have something covering your feet as you walk on the natural ground. Well, my mother, with no shoes on, 3 times a week, she would make her way through the woods to come see me. She had to be back on that plantation before that next day and the sun come up. If she wasn't back, you better believe she would feel the sting of the whip. Well, while she would come please understand, neither did we have what you all have and enjoy called lights. So our light was no other than the sun. If it wasn't the sun, it was the moon. And if it rained, and if there were clouds, we got neither. But my mother, who I never saw, would come and she would rock me. And she would sing My Little Valentine. And that's how she was known to me. And I got to be honest with you, I love my mother, even though I never met my mother. When I was about 10 years old, the word came that my mother had died. Did I have any feelings? Did I show any feelings for my mother? No, I didn't. Why you didn't? Because I never really had a relationship with my mother. My relationship instead went to my grandmother, Betty Bell. Now I got to let you know, my grandmother, Betty Bell, she took care of my masters when they were kids. The master's family, she took care of them. As a matter of fact, one master in particular was named Aaron Anthony. Aaron Anthony, on the weekends, he used to sail his boat on the Chesapeake. And believe it or not, he sailed his boat on the Chesapeake, and he was also known to be my father. He had a daughter named Miss Lucretia. Miss Lucretia did not know that I was her brother. But Miss Lucretia, in the meantime, she provided ways for me. And she didn't know that I was her brother. Now, I have the blessing to stand before you today, and I'm looking at some of you all as you're eating with what is called a fork. And I see some of the victuals that you're eating. It looks very delicious. As a matter of fact, I'm about ready to end and go in the kitchen and get me a plate. But before I do that, I want to let you know, we did not have the utensils that you're using. Our utensils was the scooping of our hand. Our utensils was what is called a seashell. Let me ask the question, anybody ever been to the beach? Raise your hand if you've been to the beach. How many of you all ever picked up seashells? How many of you all ever picked up a whole piece of seashell that is together? And you open it up, okay? Now just imagine getting that seashell, all right, open it up and cracking it. Now you got two halves. Well, believe it or not, we use those two halves as scoopers. Scoopers to scoop up the slop that we were being fed. Yes, and the slop we were being fed, it would look like gravy. But when you're hungry, you eat. Our clothes were no other than as kids. Young man, can you stand up for a second? Can you stand up for a second? You see how tall he is? They would give us gowns. And the gowns would fit him, but as he stretched up even further, that same gown he would be walking around with. So you can imagine, there was a lot of air conditioning getting up in there. The little girls, the same for them. The men, they were given 2 pair of pants, 2 shirts that had to last them throughout the year. The women, they were given 2 dresses for the year. Those dresses had to last them throughout that whole year. Now please understand, when they got these garments in new, they were white. You can only imagine the color of them by the time they got to the end of the year. You can only imagine when it snowed, when it rained, thunderstorm, and what have you. That was the only clothing, so you know there were some of us who froze to death. There was a pond. The pond was used, basically, to wash clothes. The pond was also used for the animals. Yes, the animals would go down to the pond, and they would do their business in that same pond. Some of us would go to that pond, and we would bathe in that same pond that the animals are using. Well, one day, Miss Lucretia, who I mentioned earlier, she called me. She said, "Frederick, come here, Frederick." So I ran to her, and she said, "Freddie, I want you to run upstairs to that big house, and I want you to go up on the 2nd floor." And when I ran up in there, and I got on the 2nd floor, and I screaming, Frederick, what are you doing up there? I was bathing, ma'am. You've been in there for an hour and a half. You done washed all the skin off your body. Bring your skeleton out of here. Well, when I got out that bathtub, guess what was waiting on me outside? You ready? A nice pair of brand new pants.
Nice.
What else was waiting on me? A nice, brand new shirt. And most of all, ladies and gentlemen, a pair of shoes. Now, I got to let you know about these shoes. I'm 7 years old and I've never wore a pair of shoes. Well, the bottom of my foot was so ate up, you can take a pin and you can park it right there in the middle, right there in the bottom of my shoe, and it was on my foot, and it would stay there. So my question is, how many of you all ever put your foot or feet in a pair of brand new shoes? Raise your hand. How many of you all, when you put your feet in them brand new shoes, they were hurting? Raise your hand. Yeah, we all have. Well, let me tell you something. When I put my feet in those brand new shoes, my feet were so squashed up, they were hurting, and I was walking like this. Did I take those shoes off? You better believe I kept walking just like this, because I like those shoes. That's right. I don't care how bad they were hurting. Well, Miss Lucretia, she wound up loading me up on a cart. Now, each one of you all that are sitting here watching me, let me tell you what you are. I'm going to tell you what you are, and if you don't like it, it's on you. Each one of you all sitting here, you are considered human beings. Each one of you all sitting here, you have what is called a birth certificate.
Come on now.
Each one of you all sitting here, if I'm not mistaken, have what is called a social security number.
Amen.
A card. Well, we were not considered human beings. We were considered a thing. Because masters, they purchased us. They sold us to other masters and other plantations. And let me just go back to the plantation. The plantation I was on was called the Lord's Plantation. The Lord's Plantation had 500 slaves on that plantation. So that meant that they did not have to farm out. They did not have to go and hire other slaves because they had enough slaves of their own. That's why they called it the Lord's Plantation. And not only was he the richest, sir, he was also the mayor of the city. Moving on. All right, like I said, they loaded me up and we wound up going to Baltimore. And when we got to Baltimore, I noticed we stopped into this house on Fells Point. I gotta tell y'all this. I gotta break for a second. Let me tell you this. This family lived in Fells Point in Baltimore. The street they lived on was Dallas Court. What did I say?
Dallas Court.
Dallas Court. In 2001, my biological father, Donald Lee Dowry Sr., lived on Dallas Court. He died in his apartment right there on Dallas Court. I'll tell you some more about Dallas Court later. But as this 7-year-old child, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't a child, I wasn't a kid, I was a thing. When that cart pulled up to the house, and I got off that cart, that carriage, and I started walking towards the home, I noticed there were 3 people standing there. There was a young lady there was a man, and there was a little boy. The young lady, come to find out, her name was Miss Sophia. The man, his name was Master Heward, and the little boy's name was Tommy. Now, please understand, this is a whole different era, because today, when a white person approaches you, or you look at a white person, you do not bow your head when a white person comes in your area. But what we had to do, we were not allowed to look those white people in the face. So when I started walking down that pathway, such as, I know I was getting close, so immediately I dropped my head. And as I got close, I saw the first set of feet or shoes. That was Miss Sophia. And Miss Sophia, she said, Freddie, welcome. Look at me. I got my head down and my eyes closed, and I'm saying to myself, this lady must want to get me killed. I ain't going to look at her in her face. And she said, Freddie, look at me. And I was so scared, my stomach started growling and everything. She said, look at me. So eventually what she did, she took her hand and put it up under my chin. And she lifted my head up. Now, if she was lifting my head up, I came up like this. And I could feel her. I could feel it right in my face like so. And she said, Freddie, open your eyes. I was scared, y'all. I just knew I was going to go out there in the backyard and get whipped. They were going to tie me up on a pole and whip me for looking at this white woman. And she said, Freddie, I'm going to tell you one more time, open your eyes. So I managed to open my eyes, and I knew that was going to be the end of my life. As I opened my eyes, as such, I looked at it in the face, right there in my face, I saw big blue eyes. I saw big rosy cheeks. And I saw teeth that seemed like it lasts forever going to the back of her face. And she said, welcome, Freddie. This is your new home, and we're your new family. Yes. And then all of a sudden, Master Heward, he stepped in front of me. And when he stepped in front of me, right away, I put my head down quick. Because he sounded like he didn't play the radio. And he said, Freddie, I'm going to let you know, you're here to take care of Tommy. You understand me? Yes, Master. I was here to take care of Tommy, Master. That's right. And he said, don't never let me catch you doing wrong. You understand me? Yes, Master. I was never going to do wrong. Okay? And all of a sudden, I'm going to use this term in 2024. I'm going to use this term. The sweetest thing happened. Somebody say, what was the sweetest thing that happened?
Bro, the sweetest thing.
Sir, can I tell him?
Yes, sir.
Little Tommy stepped in front of me, and little Tommy took my right hand, and he lifted it up as such, and you know what he did? He shook it, and he said, hi, I'm Tommy. I'm your brother. Yeah, that's what he said. I was like, okay. All right? I didn't know if to be scared or just to fall into the trap. Because it really was, because if I would have got loose and said, okay, let's go play, I'd have been playing right there on the pole getting whipped. So I said, okay. So anyway, as time went on, Tommy went to school. I could do everything Tommy was doing. Tommy went to school. I could not go to school. I was forbidden to read. Well, one particular day, I'll never forget this day. I'm 206 years old and I still don't forget that day. I was born February 14, 1818. You do the math. I'm now 206 years old. That's why I'm staying way over here, because I don't want to get close to you all, because if I get close to y'all, the dust might fly on you. And then next thing I know, y'all will be walking around here with masks like COVID has come back. Anyway, Mrs. Sophia was sitting in the living room reading. She had an issue with reading. And I will let you know that Miss Sophia never worked with slaves before, so she didn't know how to treat slaves. She was so loving and kind. And this particular day, she said, Frederick, come here. So I ran in the living room. And I was about to sit on the floor. And she said, no, sit here. So I sat on the what? Couch. And we were doing ABC lessons. A, B, C. And as soon as we hit D, the door opened up. And when the door opened up, it was Master Heward. He saw what was going on, and he said, Sophia, don't you be teaching those Negro boys how to read. You teach them how to read, we'll wind up in slavery. Don't do that again, you understand? And she responded real quick like, oh, Hugh, I didn't know. Now you know, don't do it again. Okay, I won't do it again. And then he stepped before me, and I dropped my head quickly. Frederick, you're not here to read. Don't you never let me catch you reading again. You understand me? Yes, Master. I was never going to read. I hate reading. Reading bad. I never read. As I sit back calmly in this chair, let me let you know. That's what came out of my mouth. But he had opened a molecule in my brain. Because the more he didn't want me to read, something told me that must be something good that they're trying to keep away from me. Well, sir, I didn't read again. No, I didn't. Sir, I never read again in front of Master. When the family would leave the house, I would go up to Tommy's room. And I would go up in Tommy's room and I would get those books. And I would start using my finger to trace the words. I would try to learn on my own how to what? Spell and read. So much so, y'all ain't gonna believe this, that Master Heward and Miss Sophia, they used to send me to the store. They used to send me on errands. Right. And guess what, y'all? They used to pay me to go to the store. Yes, they paid me allowance. Anybody want to guess what their allowance was? How much? One big, gigantic penny. Yes. And I would go to the kitchen. Before I leave, I would go to the kitchen, I'd get bread, and I'd crumble this bread up, and I'll stuff it in my pocket. And I would do like any child would do. I would skip down to the store. And when I got to the store, guess who was down to the store? White boys. Those white boys were hungry, and I was hungry. They were hungry for what? Food. I was hungry for what? No. Knowledge. Yes. So I would have reading contest or spelling contest with the white boys. In other words, I would ask them, how you spell hat? And they would go, H-A-T. And I would say, that ain't how you spell it. I said, well, spell it again. And they would spell it again, H-A-T. I said, that ain't how you spell it. Stop playing, spell it again. And then they would spell it again, H-A-T. I had them to spell the words 3 times. You know why? Because I wanted to make sure it went from my frontal lobe to my membrane. And from my membrane out of my mouth. That's how they taught me. Now, guess what? Those pennies I was getting, I saved those pennies up. And I got so many of those pennies, I want to let you know, sir, I didn't go to your nearest mall. I didn't go to Foot Locker and buy the latest Jordans.